All right. It's night again. So here I am. Christian was getting covered by Pavel. And, I don't know, like, he was talking about there's somebody that's a civilian that's saying that he has learned how to detect orbs, whatever that means, in some way. And from what Pavel said, it sounded very much like the paranormal, like radio frequency voice box kind of technology. So I guess gonna need more information on that. I had never heard what he's talking about, but he was like, Ross Coulthard needs to talk to that guy, so maybe it's legit. Maybe it's worth hearing out. I don't know. But like, yeah, I'm just gonna need more on that. But then you know, it's I get led on down, all kinds of paths on the YouTubes because of the internet magic algorithms, and I go from one thing to the next trying to pass the time. And sometimes it's great, sometimes it's pitiful, but it's had me on this like AI intelligence, and then the aliens and the Sasquatch and the all of this going all the time. And I don't know what this sort of means, if anyone else feels this way, but there seems to be like a huge convergence of a lot of obscure like directions or subject matters that are coalescing into becoming its own, like, a really big story with a whole lot of angles. I talk about that a lot. I've said, like, I've mentioned Steve from How to Hunt. Steve from How to Hunt is, whether he knows it or not, is on the cutting edge of one of the directions of the NHI story. And the NHI Spectrum story is all one, and I think is all one big story. And it's a really big story that's ongoing and has been going on for a long, long time. I think it seems like to me. But there's a lot of stuff that is like very much like related. It seems like more and more the more they go. And like, I've talked about that. I mentioned this a couple times, how it's interesting to me that like this intelligence, bomb, like, that's been going, like, now it's the AI revolution, and they essentially can like use the AI, whatever that means, the intelligence, to make something run, right? To do a function or set of functions. And like, that breaks down in a whole lot of different ways. Like, apparently they're to do transactions with credit cards and debit cards, like there's an intelligence that does that or whatever. Well, I mean, that doesn't seem like that would be very many steps. And it seems like, a compute software, like, lots of things have been making stuff like that work for a really long time. But none of them have been considered like intelligent before. And so it seems like in order to accomplish a lot of the things that this AI stuff wants to accomplish, it's like there's a whole lot of directions to the intelligence, and a lot of it seems to be like, here's a bunch of steps. It's either digital. If it's digital, it's done by AI agent technology. If it's a robot, it's a robot that has been given so many like parameters to and functions and goals and things to do, right? And no matter if it's a physical or a digital or whatever, everything's just broken down to as many steps as possible, as small as possible, and then the AI intelligence like completes all the tasks, and it does all these things over and over, and as it does it over and over, it like expands and expands, and more gets involved, and more is can be expected of it because it can encompass more and more and more. But everything seems to be like, from what I've seen, and I am in no way an expert, but from everything that I've seen, like, it seems like everything in this intelligence stuff sort of breaks down like that. And that seems to be, if the AI goal is the singularity, like if AGI is what is quote unquote the singularity, and like machines are gonna become like sentient and a life form, I don't see how they're gonna become a life form through the process of this kind of stuff, right? It seems like there's like, it's almost like they've made like what they're calling intelligence in a lot of ways is like they've made software to make a bunch of like mini micro decisions in order to affect certain systems or parts of the system, like traffic lights or whatever else, right? And that software, is intelligently like affecting it or changing it or doing whatever is going on. That sounds like a very dead, very closed, like very, it is only what it is type direction, right? Like that doesn't sound, if that's the direction that like AGI is just supposed to be good at stuff like that, like even if AGI has the ability to like upgrade itself, like it's gonna have to go a long time before all of that kind of dead stuff, like that is just function, like reaches a level where it seems like to me that there's life of any kind there. But again, like, what do I know? Nothing. I don't know anything. But it seems like there's, as soon as this intelligence stuff came, about, and the AI stuff really started to build momentum and gain steam or whatever, and it came onto the scene of the culture or whatever, it just seemed like it seems like there's like a spectrum of intelligence, just like this NHI stuff. And it just seems like as soon as it came about, it seemed like suddenly there were like different sort of directions within that. You know what I mean? Like as soon as the ChatGPT and stuff like that started coming about and gaining momentum and gaining speed and getting better and better and better and better and better and all this stuff, like it seemed like this whole spectrum opened up suddenly, like, and was just like, yeah, like this is its own element within this, But also there's this other kind of thing, and all it's ever going to do is, decide red light, yellow, or green. Or, this person made a transaction at a gas station with such and such debit card. Like, I don't see, like, one, it's just the contrast there seems like if it's sort of, it also seems like it's preempting an ecosystem that not only, like, just like the NHI in a lot of ways, that Spectrum story, the intelligence stuff seems to be like hinting at an ecosystem forming. And like not all intelligences are alike. And you know how, like, in the Matrix, how, like, in the Matrix movies, how this is the only example I'm thinking of. In the Matrix movies, the Matrix Revolutions, when he goes and talks to them at the end, when he goes to the place and talks to the machines, and they hook him up to the big face thing and do all the stuff. And, like, there's machines everywhere, and some of them are little crabbies, and some of them are little things and little animals and all this stuff. And, like, and they're just crawling around everywhere doing whatever they're doing. And it's like, it's just a ecosystem that's not nature-based, right? It's like, that's what that's suggesting. It seems like as soon as one intelligence thing that was labeled intelligence showed up, it seemed like the whole spectrum of this kind of stuff showed up with it. And I don't know if that's because intelligence is leading towards a spectrum sort of ecosystem story. That seems to be the way of everything else. So I don't know why that wouldn't be the case. That seems like the natural physics of the how things come about, you know what I mean? Everything seems to be a system within a system within a system kind of a thing. And that is just really super, super interesting to me. It really is. Like Steve on How to Hunt, he says a lot. One of the questions, like, he has formed over the years of doing this is, are there people, human beings, that are killing, are targeting / killing Sasquatch? And if so, who? He doesn't really care about the particular, like, human beings that are doing it. He wants to know who they're doing it for and who are those people, right? Like the kill team's bosses. He wants to know who the kill team's bosses are. And because he thinks, Steve, again, says that if he were to be able to figure that out, he feels like that would create, like, all of his puzzle pieces would start coming together, and that would break it loose. Like, that would start the cascading, like, everything falls into place, and oh, okay, that fills me in. And he thinks that'll fill him in pretty much on everything. Finding out who those people, like, are. And because, like, from why they're doing it to another part, really important part of his, like, whole questions he really wants to know is, like, he thinks that, and I completely agree with him, he thinks that through the NHI, that is Sasquatch, through these kill teams and who they work for and the government and in the intentional, like, withholding of information and all of this stuff is bad and not real kind of insistence, despite thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, first eyewitness testimony. But he thinks through Sasquatch, all this kind of stuff, and related to that he wants to find out and is curious about. He thinks that he'll eventually get to a place via Sasquatch, Sabe, Bigfoot, that of our story, that the Sabe Sasquatch story is more or less a human story that goes back a long time. And the Sabe is like the access route that he's gonna take to find out about that, or try to eventually, maybe potentially want to look into it. That's one of his questions. And I think that's a pretty brilliant thought, because I think that whatever this NHI spectrum story is, whatever these things are, right? I've talked a lot about like what the scientists, cult members say about how, or Lex Friedman, sorry, Lex, that like any sort of entity out there is totally unreachable and far and understanding for people and humans. And they're so far above us that we could never understand motivations or have any sort of understanding about psychology or blah, 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 blah. And that it's not that they're not understandable. It's that we're so low, we couldn't do it, right? And that we don't even really need to worry about it, so to speak, because it's like, they're not good. How could they communicate with us? You know what I mean? Like, come on. We're just dumb monkeys. And that whole thing is not true. And the evidence for that is every single NHI, no matter what it is, and the full spectrum story about how all these aliens and the Sabe and the dogmen and the this and the that and the that and the that and the that, all through the whole thing, they're all telepathic. They all talk to the humans like they say weird stuff like, you don't understand your full potential and stuff like that. And UFO accounts that have gone back since literal writing was invented. Back in the day when there were wooden ships, the UFOs that people would see used to be ships, like wooden ships, but in the air. And all that, like, intentionally making, drawing your attention so that you'll see that? Or is that a misinterpretation of, like, it doesn't matter the medium that you're using, this is just a ship and this is how you fool them? Like, oh, it's just another ship or whatever. Whatever motivation you see that from, this whole histories of the NHI, all of it says that the other side, them, the UAP, the UFO, the aliens, the extraterrestrials, the interdimensional beings, the Sabe Sasquatch, the dogmen, all of these entities that thousands and thousands of people have reported seeing and having experiences with, and all this stuff. All of this stuff in all these different cases and all of these different first-hand witnesses and all that stuff, all of the interactions would suggest that the other side has a keen, very, very commanding, not only like true understanding of like the human brain structure, how to manipulate whatever in order to speak with the humans telepathically. They see, like, as I just said, they say stuff like, you don't know your full potential. They know who we are, right? What we call ourselves. They know what we call Earth. Like, all of these different histories and stories within the histories and all that stuff, there's keen, very specific, very direct interaction and a very obvious understanding. Like, these NHI have dealt with people for or been around and had to deal with people on and off for a very, very, very long time, especially in regards to humans, since we're mortal. And and it's like we don't live very long, and the generations go and go and go and go and go. Like, we don't remember stuff, and we change very little from generation to generation to generation to generation to generation. Like, these NHI and all this stuff don't necessarily are governed by these rules and these physics of the situation and how they exist and the whole thing. And so, but there seems to be this very crucial, very like direct, very, very well understood. They understand humans great. The humans seem to be under the impression that there's no understanding between the two possible at all, because humans are so dumb. And that can't be true, because if they were so far above us, they wouldn't know how to speak directly into our heads. They wouldn't have had the experience, like telepathic all the time or whatever. Cool. But you would have to know, right? Like, specifically how to finish the telephone call, so to speak, within the receiver's brain head. There's the structures of consciousness, whatever, right? In order, it's like if you do the same stuff telepathically to communicate to a person, and then you try to do that same shit to a lizard, that ain't gonna work. But I bet you could affect both somehow, right? But that isn't gonna be the same application. But in order to know how to do the application, you would have to have a lot of familiarity and understanding. And there seems to be this just deepness, real deepness to these really big spectrum things. You know what I mean? Like the NHI spectrum story, this intelligence, thing that we've begun now, and that this whole thing of like, what is intelligence, and what can you say is intelligence, and how much intelligence does it take until it makes something by itself, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, do you believe the hype? Do you believe all these people that are saying stuff like, oh, like it's, just live another 10 years and the AI is going to tell us how to all be immortal or whatever? And it's like, they sure have a lot of, real like connection to these things. Real like they embrace it in a faith sort of open-hearted sort of way, and is that correct? Is what they say correct? Or is it a bunch of, this to that, make A go to B, done type applications that have to like encroach and take over the world layer by layer? I don't know, but that seems to be its own sort of spectrum story, the ecosystem itself. And I just think it's interesting that like all of these things seem to, in their own similarities, seem to be coalescing into the, same, it's all a part of the same kind of story. And when you look at how, like, I was just listening to Lex Fridman again because of the algorithm, and he has another scientist person on there, and the scientist person was like, I'm an astrobiologist, physicist person, and, and they were talking about, like, the whole God and religion stuff and all that kind of thing. And she straight up said, it was a woman, she straight up said, like, you know, there's a group of people that are sort of empiricists and all, they see everything breaking down to his numbers or whatever, and there's nothing, that's it, there's nothing spiritual or anything like that. And like, that's sort of taken over all academic scientific stuff, except like they're not related, because that's not good enough. And you can use empiricism to validate pretty much everything. Just ask all these humanities courses that are like making so much bang noise these days. But like, you can give anything statistics, you can make anything empiricist, but that seems to come at the cost of, with these people and these groups that know spirituality. And while all this stuff seems to be coalescing into becoming one big story, these big things, there's also this resurgence of spirituality that's happening, this resurgence of connection to God and faith and all that at the same time. And it's just like, it's so interesting. It really, really is. And I notice it and I feel it. And I don't know, do you guys? Am I crazy? I don't think so. But I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about? Or am I just out there? But all right, I got to get in there now. God bless y'all. Hope everybody sleeps well. And pray to God that God and Jesus Christ get us all through the end of the week. Good night, y'all. Talk to you next time.